Okay, the recording is started. So this is the May 7th, 2019 Rook community meeting. And in between this meeting and the last one, we released version 1.0. So that is a very exciting accomplishment, and we should all be very proud of our achievements and effort put towards that. So thank you to everyone here on the call that played a big part in getting that, that major milestone released. So I think that just looking at the project board here, I think that, basically everything got done and moved to the done column and closed up and such in the push to get 1.0 out last week on last Thursday. And so we have some items here that we had flagged or put into this column for potential patch release coming up, 1.0.x patch release. And I don't know if there has been any progress on these issues since they are not in the in progress column. But is there anyone who wants to speak up about some of these issues? I think the host networking one looks like a kind of, I don't know if I want to say blocker, but it looks like an issue to keep track of. I saw Travis mentioned on Slack that folks that are using host networking should hold off on upgrading to 1.0. So it looks like, I think that at least the investigation has started on that. Is there any owner of that issue?
Yeah. I think Blaine is looking into that.
Investigation has started. I'm not able to reproduce the issue, but Travis was with Minikube, and so I'm in a situation where my CubeADM cluster, which is theoretically more similar to what the issue reporter reported, I'm not able to repro what's going on. Travis was in Minikube, but Minikube just fails to install on my system.
Did it work for Travis?
Still fails.
It fails.
So Travis was able to repro, and I was not.
I think the user has a cluster of more than one node, so still for Minikube it's weird, but still for the cluster of the user it probably is a firewall. At least another issue that was open for an issue with 1.0 basically got closed with, my cluster network was broken, which, sorry guys, but it's 90% of the time it's a network issue in the cluster, not Rook. Though I think in that case, I probably tried out in some other environment too and see if I'm able to reproduce it.
Minikube doesn't work for you, Blaine?
No, it gets most of the way installed and then fails somewhere along the line.
That's a bummer. I know I personally rely on that one as a quick, easy single cluster spin up. That's unfortunate for you.
Yeah, and I mean I have I can set up an arbitrary node development cluster pretty easily.
But not one that repros this particular issue.
Right, and I find it a little bit strange that I have a 3-node setup right now that I'm testing that's the same number of nodes as the person who reported the issue. They're both CubeADM. I'm using pod security policies, which I would think would make mine break before his would, but that's not the case. Yeah, I'm stumped.
All right. Well, we'll continue investigating into that, and we'll update the issue there. The other ones here, I don't think just looking at them, I don't think I have is much concern about that host networking issue that that we're actively telling people to hold off on upgrading for. So that one 3.1.1.1 sounds like the most the highest priority here, and the other ones we could continue working on, but I don't see any that I'm super concerned about unless someone else has a different insight into that.
I think you talked about 3.1.0.6 or
No, I have
Oh,
not.
the free 1.1. Oh no, yeah.
Yeah,
Free
this one.
1.1 is fine. Yep.
Yep. Okay. So, we will need, soon we'll be ramping up on 1.1 and getting some agreement about the scope of issues in that milestone and planning for that and all that sort of stuff. But I think right here on the heels of getting 1.0 out, we can focus on getting patches out that we need to and stabilizing and helping support the user base as well to get everyone upgraded and file issues and fix them and drive to more quality in that release. But it's still very happy, very pleased with everybody and the efforts to get 1.0 out. So that's great. The next topic that I had was a bit of a postmortem or retrospective on the 1.0 process. Excuse me, geez. And if anybody had any observations or complaints or ideas for things that we could do better regarding that release, and for next time to kind of put that back into our as input into our planning and execution processes, then we can have that conversation or take some of those ideas here and capture them now.
I
Go ahead.
I mean, I have several things which are related to some of the issues I posted, being that trying to actually get 1.0 out is difficult, even like during when we're theoretically like code frozen. We need more CI runners. We only have 2 runners, and it takes like 1 to 1.5 hours to run CI, and that just stalls everything, which especially around release time makes things like a lot slower than they need to be. And I also personally found that we kept talking about 1.0 being released, this week or next week or tomorrow or the next day or the next day or the next day, and it just kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And when I gave my presentation at the Open Infrastructure Summit with the understanding that Rook was supposed to be released the day after I gave my talk, and was like, okay, like I will report that people can go play with version 1.0 after that. But it still wasn't until yesterday or today that it was finally released, like a full week later. And
can you clarify about that? About what you're saying, that it wasn't released until today or yesterday? It was released last week, right?
I don't actually know when it was released, I guess, but it was still pushed back and pushed back. And the reasoning that I kept hearing for why it was pushed back was waiting on a bound to finish, like a website facelift. And it's not a healthy upstream community when a single company is going to stall a release for things that aren't critical functional issues.
Okay. I think that speaks to needing more visibility into a release process, or about what are the issues. But it was my understanding that we had agreed upon, the website being updated along with the 1.0 release as well. So I don't think it's necessarily fair to say, a single company is stalling the whole thing. I think that's not an accurate characterization of it.
I think it's different to say that content needs to be updated, but to say that like website stylization and organization needs to be updated is a different thing.
Well, the entire content was updated as well.
And also, Blaine, there was 4 companies involved, including the CNCF, trying to get press lined up, media opportunities. It's a big release, and we wanted to make a big splash around it. And as you know, these things actually, the level of coordination is quite significant. in trying to get 4 different parties plus press plus marketing plus everything else around there and aligned around the release. So it's not.
I don't think any of that information that you're conveying now was very clearly stated leading up to this.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm hearing is that's probably the biggest miss, is that it wasn't really clear what was happening behind the scenes to get a 1.0 release lined up. And it's not, hey, look, we're style issues of our website. It was actually, there's a lot more going on. We had people basically working around the clock trying to figure out how to get all of this lined up for a big release, of which, folks from Red Hat, folks from HFS, CNCF, everybody was trying to produce content and timing and review copy and try to get all this lined up, and it wasn't ready. It kept taking longer to get it all figured out, and so we opted for a stronger release than a more expedient one. And I what I'm hearing is that wasn't communicated, or that approach or philosophy wasn't communicated. And I think that's good feedback on. I'm not sure where we would communicate this. Maybe it needs to. Maybe there. Like one thing we did late was we created a V1 release Slack channel, and we were trying to coordinate with that, but that came quite late. So maybe for visibility purposes, we could have done that earlier or communicated that earlier.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of my feeling that there should be no behind the scenes for an upstream project, right? Like it all should be very transparent and visible.
Yeah, and I don't think there was an intention to not involve people. I think it's just trying to get coordination around this thing. So I think you're right. We should think through what it means to, like, as a release process, we should probably think through what it means to kind of involve more folks or be more transparent around the actual release process. This was a big one. So compared to like 0.9 or 0.8, this one involved quite a bit of coordination across all these different entities that I just described. One more thing on the CI runner stuff. I thought it was I thought we had a discussion about this, that we should just go ahead and increase the CI runners. I'm not a bit surprised that we just didn't do that. I think there's no this is not a cost issue or anything. I think it's just a bandwidth of who can go configure the new CI runners. So as an action item on that one, I think can we please double the CI runners?
All right. I mean, this kind of speaks to the difficulty of coordinating releases with more storage providers and across more people. We may want to start having conversations about decoupling the releases of each provider, but then that comes with difficulties as well. But that's something to start thinking about, or start having some conversations about. I think it looks like you have a topic for that as well later on, huh, Blaine?
Yeah, I don't know if we want to segue now or move bullet by bullet.
Move this to the bottom. Yeah, let's address that bullet by bullet in just a second. Let's see if there are any other brainstorm issues about the release process, or things that we could have done better, or things that went well. Just capture any other burning ideas here. All right, let's we can get some of Travis's feedback as well when he is back online. So the pending release notes issue here, Alex, what was do you want to talk about that? I think you're on mute, Alex.
Yeah, I lost connection there. One thing which is, well, which if we're still talking about the post-mortem, would be that the redesign of the website. Well, to put it like that, I began redesigning or creating their proof of concept or something at least, which, well, would have been, to put it like that, in itself, well, not completely ready, but in itself working. And, well, at one point, the state was that, hey, yeah, Upbound has someone already working on it. Which, well, kind of cost me a good amount of work time, which I kind of lost in that.
Did you, so there's obviously some miscommunication about responsibility for updating the website or, assignments of that basically. Did we have like a tracking issue for that was, like being tracked in the milestone and the release, the project board and all that sort of stuff and like assigned and everything?
For the website redesign, not really, but at least for the restructure, which I think we all, or well, most people were like, yeah, this is the website redesign that knew about it.
Yeah, it definitely does sound like there was, some miscommunication or, the failure for everyone to make known what they were, what the plans were. So that kind of goes around the first bullet point as well too, like response. I'll take that one as kind of a separate one.
Yeah, it's basically again that more or less we need to have it open, now well transparent enough that we would have also created an issue for, well, redesign website, for example, that then everybody knows what's going on, and as plain that there's in the end nothing really behind the curtains.
Yeah, I think that, defining what I think obviously standardizing on, issues and assignments and project boards and milestones, that's definitely a process that has worked well. And, it's not like that process isn't working. I think if you don't necessarily use the process, then that's where you're going to run into issues. So I think kind of as a reminder and a lesson learned here about the importance, especially in a open community driven project that has hundreds of contributors, that when you are working on certain tasks that that needs to be well known, and there needs to be just one issue tracking it, and needs to have clear assignment and ownership, so that we don't have this type of issue. So that was a miss, and I agree with that, Alex. Alex, do you want to talk about the pending release notes here?
Yeah. I have talked with Travis as you wrote the pending, or well, the actual release notes again, and I more or less was thinking, why don't we just well, have a label for pull requests that is, I don't know, like saying, hey, this is important for the release notes or something. And maybe even in the end, like have a bot which then compiles it based on a list, based on these PRs labeled. But for the first part, that we simply have a label which marks the PR as, hey, this is important. Because at least what's, for me, from time to time happening, I make my PR, it's reviewed, it's green, we just need to merge it. And then it's like, oh, wait a second. Is this important for the release notes, or would this be not important? And in the worst case, I would need to go ahead again, edit my PR, wait for CI and everything to run again just for this pending release notes change.
I think with that, if you want to edit the pending release notes after you've kind of done the code and gotten a green build, then I am perfectly fine with doing either one, adding the skip CI keyword to the pull request description, or running the build there with the new skip integration tests configuration value. I'm perfectly fine with that. You don't have to wait on all the unit tests and stuff to run if the only change you made was updating the pending release notes. On this whole label idea, I think that if we were to do that sort of thing, because I don't know necessarily how an effective way how a bot would generate the pull request. The release notes. That would be kind of maybe a difficult task to complete there with automation, at least in some respects. But I think that if you just label pull requests as important for release notes, then what you're going to end up doing though is that when it comes time for the release, you're going to kind of be, postponing that burden of, authoring quality release notes to who's ever running the release, and kind of, and they might not have the same context that was, more alive when the pull request was active. So I think having that burden on each, pull request author to in addition to writing the code, to be able to write a few sentences about the value and, maybe migration notes or, any sort of high quality content for the release notes. It seems to be very well done in the context of the pull request, and kind of distributing that responsibility amongst all the pull request authors, as opposed to, putting it off until the end is the way I view that issue.
Yeah, well, this is more or less thought for the PRs which, for example, don't get a pending release note entry during their creation, and even after the merge. Like, I had my PR with the annotations. I had it today with someone about it. I was like, yeah, hey, haven't you seen this new feature with the annotations in the release notes? And I looked at them in the release notes, and it wasn't there.
I mean, why is that? Because they shouldn't have been added to the pending release notes as part of the pull request?
I know it probably would have been a good item to add to the release note, well, to the pending release notes, and then also to the release notes.
Because that's part of the pull request checklist, is to update the pending release notes if the features should be in there at least. Yeah,
but should it be in there?
Well, that's the question that we had to figure out during that pull request, is it's part of the checklist, and that's making that decision about if it belongs in the pull request, the release notes or not, is part of the process.
Yeah,
I have a couple of thoughts here. I think having a bot, I'm also not sure what we would do except for having a pending release notes note in the pull request somewhere. I think Jared makes a good point about authors noting things. We certainly could create labels for important big features to make sure that when release time comes, we can go back and verify that things still look good, that there hasn't, that nothing has been overlooked. We could also kind of help prevent things from being overlooked by having part of the CI actually look for changes to the release notes, and then requiring a special tag for specifically having a PR without release notes attached. And that would be a little bit more work for, I think, most PRs to add that little tag. I'm thinking of the skip CI tag that you would put in brackets in the subject.
Is the issue here that we're having a difficult time identifying when release notes should be, or pending release notes should be updated, or we're not following that process?
I think from my standpoint, I know reviewing PRs, sometimes that's just something that I forget to actually mentally check for, relying on people to make pull requests and tick the box if needed.
Are people checking the box off and not doing it, or where's it breaking down?
So sometimes I'm not sure if it's actually a thing to note in the release notes.
You mean like the
At least
feature's not worth it?
Well,
Like it's too
basically,
small, or what do you mean?
yeah, you have small features which sometimes it's just I don't know, just a new environment very well, and that
Yeah.
should probably mention again. But there's sometimes just things where, as that I'm personally not 100% sure. So that's more or less where I would like to see such a label in general. That
How is a label going to help though if we don't know if it should be included or not? I'm not sure how a label helps that.
in the
I think
without changing the PR, we can just label it and in the end wrap the list of PRs. That is important.
But if we don't know if it's important, I'm not
label,
sure if I'm following this.
I think the feature label kind of applies. Like anytime we add a feature, I think that's something that we probably should note in the release notes in some manner.
Yeah, that's probably a good rule of thumb. I think that maybe we're just glossing over the checklist now. I don't know if we've been paying the right attention to it that we need to, and the checklist, is there with the intent of, making sure that the pull requests meet a certain, set of criteria, and the pending release notes is one of them. If we're not sure if something should be in the pending release notes, then either one, it doesn't hurt to add it, so putting a quick note about it is not going to hurt anything. Or two, you can ask the community, or ask the reviewer of the pull request, hey, do you think this should be included in that? And so that we don't, so until this box is checked, or when this box is checked, that we're done with it, we don't have to worry about it again. I like it being part of the pull request process so that we have all the context to make that decision and be done with it up then, and not have to worry about it later on when we're scrambling for a release or have forgotten the conversations. It's all paged out of our minds,
Yeah, I think we just need to take a better look at the checklist and actually make sure that everything is then checked in the end.
Yeah.
On the other hand, though, that we also kind of look into I would really say also remind people sometimes, or maybe if we go through PR and it's like, oh, why is there no pending release notes change, for example? That would be more or less a thing, because I'm sometimes not really sure. And it's not like a burning question, even if I would look over the point. I'm more like, no, it's not worth it. But 5 other people maybe say, no, this is worthy to be added to the pending release notes. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so we talked about the CI runners, and this conversation here about versioning back, each storage provider separately from Rook. I think that sounds like that could be a long conversation that needs to be pretty well informed, and I would love Travis to be a part of that as well. Do you think that we could set up some time to talk about that, after Barcelona, Blaine? Would that sound acceptable to you?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And this is definitely a long burn kind of process. It came up briefly, but I think that's kind of a little bit part of like what I was talking about potentially segueing into before, is just when there are a lot of backends in Rook itself, it becomes harder to coordinate a release.
Mm-hmm.
By saying, okay, like Ceph is ready, HFS is ready, Cassandra is ready, and like I think we all did a pretty great job this time, actually, at being on the same page at the right time. But I know that that's very hard to do, and it's not something that we can always always count on. And so having a way of pulling out, some of the larger or more active backends to be, versioned separately on their own, I think makes sense. And then Rook becomes the framework, the SDK for those, in addition to a place for the smaller kind of in-tree backends.
Yeah, that'll definitely require a fair amount of thinking through and coordination and such. But go ahead, Bassam.
And we've had similar thoughts about this plane. So I think it might be really good to kind of spend some time all together thinking through this.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely want to figure out how to make the project more efficient, productive. Let's spend time after the KubeCon Barcelona and just see if we can make some progress on this.
Yeah, that sounds like good timing as well.
Yeah.
If we're all still alive after KubeCon Barcelona, that is. Yep. So Blaine, for your next item there, the Alex and Travis and Bassam and I, the current maintainers, had met, and I think we have now reached an agreement about how to implement a system that unblocks each storage provider to be able to approve and merge their own code changes, so to increase the code velocity. And so Travis had we had been discussing that and incorporating comments and feedback and all that sort of stuff. And I had told Travis that this week I am hoping to open a pull request now with kind of those converged, agreed upon ideas to get it into the repo and start implementing that. So I'm hoping that would be able to remove some bottlenecks, increase the velocity, and unblock some of the more active parts of the code base.
Yeah. I also want to point out that this topic in some form or another has been going on since before January, which is a full 5 months at
I think
least.
it's just going on a bit longer already. Hasn't it? I think it was already in December.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've updated the governance, I think, once in the project lifecycle here. There was some discussion too that needed to be resolved amongst the maintainer team. It did take longer than I wanted to, and it was also kind of pushed off as a priority for other other work items and tasks as well. So it did not go as quickly as I would have hoped. I definitely personally could take accountability for it not going as quickly as it could have been. So that's I take responsibility for that, Blaine. All right. So I think are most everyone here going to be in Barcelona?
I will be.
And Alex, I know you will be. Bassam will be. Ashish, are you going to be in Barcelona by any chance?
No, I can't make it this time.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully we'll be able to catch up at another conference sometime soon.
Yeah, sure.
Just for everyone that is going, if you guys are unable to find us, there's a simple point. I hope if I'm able to find Jared and Travis and Bassam and so on, if you see a guy with a flag which it has the Rook logo and so on in it, you can be pretty sure that it's me and possibly also Jared and Travis.
Unless somebody else captures your flag and takes it.
No, I will fight for that.
That's funny. That's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing everyone in Barcelona and catching up. There will be a Rook specific booth that the CNCF has donated for us. So come around the Rook booth and we'll be able to meet and discuss and can have some in-person time, which would be great. All right, so that's everything I had on the agenda here. Did anybody else want to bring up any other items that were not in the agenda notes? Alrighty, so great job on getting 1.0 out there, and we will see each other in Barcelona, I guess, next time. All right, have a good Tuesday, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.